Ashlee Pfaff had been passionate about animals most of her life. She graduated from New Mexico State University with a biology degree in 2002. Afterwards, she secured a job at Colorado's Ocean Journey in Denver. This was mostly an aquarium showcasing a variety of freshwater and marine habitats and the animals within them. But it was also home to Sumatran tigers, sea otters, and birds. Ashlee worked there for 3 years, gaining valuable experience of working with animals and under conservation programs designed to educate the general public. By the time she left the organization, she was an experienced zookeeper and was excited to begin her new role at Denver Zoo in the fall of 2005. Her new role meant she was looking after a variety of big cats, some polar bears, and sea lions. Duties included feeding the animals, cleaning out their enclosures, and giving educational talks to the paying public. It was a job that Ashlee wholeheartedly threw herself into, and she relished every moment of it. But on February 24, 2007, just over a year after her first shift, tragedy struck. Ashlee was assigned to clean out the Jaguar's cage that morning. She was experienced and had carried out that kind of work many times before. But this time, she made an error, a fatal error. Through carelessness or distraction, she failed to secure the Jaguar away whilst she worked inside a contained area of the feline building. The exact details will never be known, as there were no witnesses to the buildup of the event. But the following is one possible scenario. Ashlee had finished clearing up the inside section of the Jaguar enclosure when she stepped outside. But as she did so, she failed to ensure that the Jaguar was locked away in the furthest indoor section. For some unknown reason, Ashlee continued to work in the walkway without securing the metal door behind her. The Jaguar was a 6-year-old male. He had been born in a Santa Cruz Municipal Zoo of South American fauna, a Bolivian zoo, and was transferred to Denver in 2005. His name was Jorge, the Spanish for George, and he was named after President Bush. His keepers at the Bolivian facility had said how placid Jorge had been ever since birth, but his twin was a menace. He was often bullied by his brother, and the two of them would scrap, but Jorge would always appear to be the submissive one. Later that year at Denver Zoo, Jorge was due to be introduced to a 16-month-old female jaguar named Capora. Once the female was old enough, the two of them would share an enclosure together in the hope of joining the captive breeding program. Ashlee and the rest of the zoo staff regularly underwent safety training, and she had shadowed veteran zookeepers before. When Jorge spotted Ashlee walking along the caged corridor section, he began to walk towards her. He was curious. Normally, he was locked away indoors when staff worked in his outdoor section. He could smell the keeper and watched her as she swept the concrete floor. Ashlee didn't notice the jaguar begin to move stealthily through his enclosure. In the wild, jaguars are native to Central and South America. They are masters of dense forest habitats and are obligate carnivores. They most often prey on capybara and giant anteaters, but will also take down deer, peccaries, turtles, and caimans. In captivity, however, they don't have the chance to catch live prey, and having a person inside its enclosure was stimulating. When he reached the metal gate, he nudged it curiously with his muzzle. It swung open. Ashlee turned when she heard the metal hinges squeak slightly. Her heart missed a beat when she saw Jorge's head peer around the side of the doorway. He was loose. There was nothing between her and the big cat, with one of the strongest bite forces in the animal kingdom. Although the leopard had been born in captivity, he was still packed full of wild instinct, an instinct that still saw a moving target inside his enclosure as potential prey. Ashlee hesitated, hoping upon hope that the jaguar would retreat back into its enclosure or turn the other way. She tried to steady her breathing and keep calm. She didn't want to excite him or entice him unnecessarily. She began to slowly reach down to her radio to call for backup. But then Jorge came for her. Before she could react, Jorge suddenly bounded across the concrete towards Ashlee. She felt sick in the pit of her stomach as she knew what was coming. He covered the distance in less than a second. His paws were silent as he leapt across the open corridor. His eyes were fixed on Ashlee's, and he went in for the kill. The jaguar jumped up at her and brought his jaws crushing down around the back of her neck. He weighed 140 pounds, 63 kilograms, and brought Ashlee crashing down to the ground. She tried to fight him off. She could feel his warm body against hers as she was sandwiched between the predator and the cold concrete floor of the enclosure. He grappled with her, using his powerful paws to batter her around, bruising her and knocking the wind from her lungs. The force from the bite was overpowering, and she felt her neck give way, her vertebrae crushing and her muscles tearing. Ashlee cried out, and at that moment a witness saw the legs of the keeper sticking out from underneath the Jaguar and immediately raised the alarm. 4 times a year, staff are trained in how to respond to an animal out of containment. Some members of staff are trained in the use of firearms and tranquilizer darts. They rushed to the feline building. 4 of the 16 staff who were on duty that morning were at the scene within minutes of the attack. Everything they had trained for came down to this moment. And in an emergency like that, each moment counts. A tranquilizer dart can take 3 to 5 minutes to take effect. Ashlee didn't have that time. Instead, they tried to scare the Jaguar away with a fire extinguisher. This worked momentarily, but when staff were tending to Ashlee, the Jaguar came back at them and needed to be taken down. Zoo staff took aim and shot Jorge. He let out a surprised screech and reared backwards before rushing away and collapsing in another section of his enclosure. Emergency services had already been called and immediately began working on the young woman, but tragically, Ashlee didn't make it. The 27-year-old died 90 minutes after the attack from a broken neck and extensive internal injuries. Staff were shocked about the death of a much-loved member of staff. She had worked for years with large carnivores and was considered experienced amongst the zoo staff. It was a tragedy that shook the close-knit zoo community to the core. Her friends and family were obviously devastated and needed answers. But the ordeal wasn't over yet. Jorge was still alive, but only just. He was severely injured from the gunshot wound, but the bullet hadn't killed him. Vets tried desperately to save him, but he had lost so much blood that they decided it was best to euthanize him. They were unable to find a suitable vein, and so decided to tranquilize him before cutting his jugular. He also died that day. The zoo had always maintained strict safety protocols. Staff were well versed in the handling of the animals, particularly those that could cause potential harm. Although it was allowed for zookeepers to work alone, those that did were briefed on the procedures to ensure their safety. The zoo was put under intense scrutiny following Ashlee's untimely and tragic death. An investigation tried to determine exactly what happened and how the Jaguar and Ashlee were allowed to come into contact with each other. All doors and locks were investigated, and none was found to be faulty. In the end, it was found that human error was to blame, and Ashlee had failed to shut 2 of the connecting doors. Not only that, but she hadn't made sure that Jorge was locked away inside before she began working in the outdoor section. Her friends and family will never know why Ashlee made these devastating mistakes, or exactly what happened in her last moments before meeting her terrifying final affliction.